I got my hand delivered.
Yeah.
As long as water goes through, it makes an opening, so it blocks a little bit.
Rich.
On that street. Oh, yeah.
We had to put a downspout in the front yard, in the front house. Front of the downspout right in the middle there. So why don't you just have that guy come up and lift the gutters?
No, I didn't. I didn't get a notice to come out the sidewalk.
Oh, gee,
They attempt a couple times.
Oh, there was no downspout or something?
Yeah, there's no downspout at all. And we could have had it like lifted.
Yes, they're all.
So I went to the corner. No.
Yes. Yes, the other didn't do what you did, keeps the yard clean. I have another name that I'd much rather have heard.
Yeah, you could have a lot more.
Absolutely.
The one that Randy was talking about. What's that? You had her, and I get them all.
I don't know who they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have that side, right? You moved to this side?
Oh, yeah. They're backing up. They're doing that about $6,000 to $8,000 in repairs now. Because of that.
I use Airbnb. I use Airbnb.
See, this guy, I thought.
So he didn't buy it. They threw it on the internet.
We got one more council. All right, if we can head to the dais, your councilman.
Relax. Everything isn't okay, but I told you so much. I worked all these days. We did software installation. That's what.
The house is built for 40s, 5 40 square feet, 40 pounds per square feet. They had almost nothing. So they had 200 people in there. They could run almost 2 feet. So to save me, I just wrote it down. I gotta let it do that.
Let's start. If it comes to the point where he has a question, we will,
I did.
They're throughout the country. They run out of room.
All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Delaquila, Director of Law Pignatello, Director of Finance Herwick,
Here.
Councilman at Large Elliott,
Here.
Councilwoman at Large Kelly,
Here.
Councilwoman at Large Stager,
Here.
Ward 1 Councilman Biassiata,
Here.
Ward 2 Councilman Robo,
Here.
Ward 3 Councilman Snitsky,
here.
Ward 4 Councilman Greenwald,
Here.
Director of Public Service and Properties Levis,
Here.
Building Commissioner Vitardi,
Here.
Engineer Collins.
We'll now have the reading and disposal of the journal. Please, everybody speak clearly, loudly, closer to the microphone. It'll aid in the recording of the minutes and the typing them up. Reading and disposal of the journal.
Mr. President,
Councilman.
having read the council minutes, meeting of December 26th, I find no errors or omissions, and therefore I move that we approve them as printed.
Second.
Roll call. Yes.
Elliott?
Yes.
Greenwald?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Snitsky?
Yes.
Stager?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Consent agenda of January 8, 2018. Councilwoman.
If there's no division of the question, I move that we accept the consent agenda for January 8th of 2018.
I second.
Roll call. Yes.
Elliott?
Yes.
Greenwald?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Snitsky?
Yes.
Stager?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Resolutions of accommodation. Reports of committees. Planning, zoning, and economic development.
Mr. President, our next meeting is Tuesday, January 16th, and minutes from the previous meeting are on file with the clerk.
Works.
Mr. President, the next meeting of the Public Works Committee is February 5th. Working on the minutes. We'll have the minutes soon.
Community services.
Mr. President, our last meeting was January 2nd. The meeting of the minutes is on file with the clerks, with the council clerk rather, and our next meeting is February 5th.
Police and safety.
I'm still working on the minutes, sir, and I believe the next meeting is going to be on February the 5th.
Parks and recreation.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for chairing the last committee meeting for me in my absence. And our next meeting will be Tuesday, January 16th.
Thank you, Councilman. Rules, ordinance, and ethics.
Mr. President, our next meeting is January 16th, and the minutes of January 2nd are on file with the clerk.
Finance, civil service, and personnel. Our last meeting was January 2nd. Those meetings are pending. The minute meetings are pending. Our next meeting is January 16th. Appointments and confirmations.
None this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. The record note Mayor's attendance. Council is now open to the audience on legislation only. First row right. Second. Second row. Third. Fourth. Last row, anyone? Tonight? Yes. All right, ordinances and resolutions. I'll now have, moving on to amended ordinance number 132-2017.
Mr. President.
Councilman Stager.
Suspend the rules under the charter and read amended ordinance number 132-2017 by title only for its third and final reading.
Second.
Roll call.
Biassiata?
Yes.
Elliott?
Yes.
Greenwald?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Snitsky?
Yes.
Stager?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Amended ordinance number 132, 2017, introduced by Mayor Delaquila and Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement for establishment of the Cuyahoga Valley Council of Governments.
Do we have a further motion?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman.
I move that we pass ordinance, amended ordinance number 132-2017.
I second the motion.
Oh.
Biassiata?
Yes.
Elliott?
Yes.
Greenwald?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Snitsky?
Yes.
Stager?
Yes.
Robel?
Yes.
Amended ordinance 132-2017 is passed. Amended ordinance 133-2017. We have a motion. Councilman.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and read amended ordinance number 133-2017 by title only for its third and final reading.
I second.
Roll call.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Greenwald.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Snitsky.
Yes.
Stager.
Yes.
Robel.
Yes.
Amended ordinance number 133, being introduced by Mayor Delaquilla and Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a new member participation agreement with the Chagrin Valley Dispatch Council of Public Safety Services.
We have a further motion.
Mr. President,
Councilman.
I move that we pass amended ordinance number 133-2017.
I second the motion.
Any comments from council? No. I'll just add, we had a caucus meeting earlier today, brought in 3 experts, opportunity for everyone to ask their questions. I believe all the questions have been answered satisfactorily. In addition, I've been doing my due diligence for several weeks now. I'm gonna put these on record in the clerk's office. If anyone wants to make a public records request, I'm okaying it now. What I have here is 13 testimonials from various police chiefs, fire chiefs throughout the region, all recommending the service, everything that's great about it. And I also have their ruling from ABCO International, which is Association of Public Safety Communications Officials organization, ranking the dispatch that we're about to enter, hopefully, as second in the nation. So in addition to the 13 police chiefs in the community, our own police and fire chief also recommends. So that's 15 chiefs in an international organization. And I'll give these to the clerk and we can just keep them on file. They don't have to be in the meeting minutes. If there's any further comments, roll call, please.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Greenwald.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Snitsky.
Yes.
Stager.
Yes.
Robel.
Yes.
Amended ordinance 133-2017 is passed. Of ordinance 141-2017.
Ordinance number 141, 2017, introduced by councilpersons Biassiata, Kelly, Elliott, Stager, Robel, Snitsky, and Greenwald. An ordinance to appropriate a sum not to exceed $39,722.04. Installation and programming of 19 Kenwood portable radios, VP 6430 Model 2, with appurtenances for use in the City of Seven Hills Police Department. Said purchase to be made from Vasu Communications Incorporated of Avon, Ohio, through state purchasing contract number 573004-0.
Now for second reading of ordinance 142-2017.
42, 2017, introduced by councilpersons Biassiata, Kelly, Elliott, Stager, Robel, Snitsky, and Greenwald. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a merchant processing agreement with Card Connect, Russia, Pennsylvania, for the use of a computer program that will be in compliance with the payment card industry for a more secure system in processing credit cards, recreation complex.
Moving on to ordinance 1-2018. I move that we read ordinance number 1-2018 by title only for its first and final reading. Roll call.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Greenwald.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Snitsky.
Yes.
Stager.
Yes.
Robel.
Yes.
Ordinance number 1, 2018, introduced by councilpersons Biassiata, Kelly, Stager, Elliott, Robel, Snitsky, and Greenwald. A moral claim authorizing and directing the Director of Finance to pay Sarah Corsi of 5785 Kunzer Drive, Seven Hills, Ohio, a sum not to exceed $136.99 as reimbursement of monies expended due to a sanitary sewer main discharging in 2 bathrooms, which has been determined to be the city's responsibility, and declaring an emergency.
I move we read ordinance number 1-2018. I move that we pass ordinance number 1-2018. Roll call.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Greenwald.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Snitsky.
Yes.
Stager.
Yes.
Robo.
Yes.
We'll now have the first reading of ordinance number 2-2018.
Ordinance number 2, 2018, introduced by councilpersons Biassiata, Kelly, Elliott, Stager, Robo, Snitsky, and Greenwald. Enacting new chapter 155 entitled Moral Claims, as contained in Title V Administrative of Part 1 Administrative Code of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Seven Hills.
Moving on to resolution number 1-2018. I move that we amend resolution number 1-2018 by removing the emergency clause and having the first reading.
Second.
Roll call.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Greenwald.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Snitsky.
Yes.
Stager.
Yes.
Robo.
Yes.
We'll now have the first reading on resolution number 1-2018.
Amended Resolution Number 1, 2018, introduced by councilpersons Biassiata, Kelly, Elliott, Stager, Robo, Snitsky, and Greenwald, and repealing the freeze on wages, hiring, and promotions for employees who are not covered or a part of a City of Seven Hills collective bargaining unit.
Council is now open to the audience on miscellaneous comment. Front row.
Lucy McKernan, 755 Hillside. This is the third time I've had to come before this new council, I believe, about this issue. So I waited until this part. So last time I brought this up, I had mentioned that I was unhappy with Council Snitsky having a hunting permit because it's a conflict of interest. Last time I was here, and then after that, I also mentioned I did not like the illegal use of less than the required by law city ordinance acreage by Officer Greer hunting on North Skyline, as well as another property, and 4 people he gave permits to hunt illegally. And I say illegally because it is a local ordinance. It's a law that it has to be 2.25 acres. One of those properties is 1.21 acres at 7081 Broadview, where 2 people have permits. I don't know what has been done to discipline Officer Greer. I don't know what has been done to whether or not these permits were revoked. But I'm very sad and upset to report to you that while I was on my way to work on Friday, December 29th, the 320-pound FUD across the street from where I live got up in his tree stand. And I was on my way to work, and I work with the elderly. When I'm at work, I can't be emotionally upset about something. And he got up in his tree stand, he struck a deer with an arrow, and she ran out right in front of my car with blood all over her. She had her two fawns running behind, terrified. It traumatized me, and she was probably pregnant with, so 4 or 5 lives have been ruined by this. Now, I want to know, first of all, why Officer Greer has given his private number to hunters to contact him when they wound an animal, when it's clearly stated right here in all of the regulations and even in the book, the community newsletter, that you have to call 524-3911. 524-3911 is dispatch. That is the number you are required to contact. Wait a second, 4423 or 524-3911. It's right there in the regulation. Why does this person, is why is he allowed to continue issuing permits, hunting this hunter, this 320-pound guy, camo man from South Detroit, Matthew Stephen James, to wound a deer? It's a nuisance. Creating a nuisance. I've never, in the 11 years I've lived in Seven Hills, had a deer run out that close in front of my vehicle. Never. And I'm always looking. So I was going in slow. That's why I was able to stop and not hit her by less than half the distance between here and where you are, like 8 or 10 feet. I'm very upset. I was emotionally traumatized by this. I do not understand why this officer is allowed to continue breaking the law, and this hunter has been given Officer Greer's personal phone number to contact when something goes wrong. Well, I know why, because there's no record of wrongdoing then. There's no record of wrongdoing. And it's, hey, I have a police scanner. I hear it all the time. A deer is injured. The police got to come and put it down. And they're trespassing, and they're aiding and abetting hunters to go onto property where they do not have prior written permission. Starting now, I would like to see Officer Greer stripped of his duties of issuing permits. Has authority over Officer Greer, Chief Saloom, and I know who has authority over the police, Mayor Delaquila. This is a nuisance. Having a deer with blood all over her run out in front of my car, that kind of thing didn't happen here before. Maybe deer ran out in front of cars and people hit them. These people who are on their cell phones are going 40 down hillside when it's 25, but I don't have that problem. And it shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't be something that's happening to anybody. Sentient beings with families in tow and their babies seeing this happen in our city. This is not community service. Killing is not community service. I don't understand this. I don't understand why nothing is being done. You can do, if you're going to allow this slaughtering in our community, the least you can do is try to regulate it the right way. This good old boys crap has really reached its limit with me. I've had it. I used to enjoy looking at the deer in my yard. I used to enjoy watching them, taking pictures of them. I could pick out each individual. I know which doe this was. And she was never tracked. She was wounded and never tracked. So she probably went away in freezing weather with a wound like that and didn't make it. Pregnant with probably with twins, and 2 left behind who they don't know how to overwinter without their mother. Being that ran out in front of my car with blood all over her, and I called dispatch, and then dispatch says to me it's low priority. We'll get to it. And then to find out, and how do I know this? Because I called dispatch, and I said, send an officer. When I get home from work, I want to file a report about this. They would not send anybody. Instead, I get a call from a private number from Officer Greer. That this had happened. He tried to deny it. And finally, when I gave him the details, he couldn't deny it anymore because I identified the size of the deer and where she went and everything else. And I knew he knew that I knew what I was talking about. So then he finally relented and he said, he didn't call dispatch, he called law enforcement. Now that is not what's in the regulation. I want reports every time a deer is wounded and injured. I have a right to get a record of that from dispatch or a public record of some other way. This bull crap started with the Mayor's Association and Lake Erie Allegheny Partnership and having these secret meetings behind closed doors on which the resolution, which the ordinance is based. It's all lies, and it's all, when you're going to kill, I guess all bets are off. I guess you can't be ethical when you're killing beings. Enough of this. I want that hunter's permit revoked. I want Greer stripped of his duty. He's lucky I'm not demanding his job be taken away. This is ridiculous. Really, this is where I live, and I have to go to work with a 97-year-old and his 93-year-old wife. And then I have to go there and be on. I have to focus, and I have to be there and then have to have something like this happen to me when I'm on my way to work. What's going to happen? It's a 54% wound rate blood sport. This is not something they don't just drop, even when you shoot them with a shotgun. Stop this shit already. And I want it to be 5 acres. I want it to go back to 5 acres and not some long due process red tape. We'll get to it next hunting season. I want it to be 5 acres now.
All right. Point of order.
Had enough.
Well, we're going to have order. Set next front row still.
Len Schmall, 6249 Hastings Drive. I live in an area with about 5 acres behind us off of East Ridgewood, Giant Glen, Winchester, and Crossview. We tried to get a consortium of residents together to get 2.4 acres so that they could hunt back there. We have a herd. As of this morning, there was 14 deer out there. They're about there every day. Our yard is decimated. We don't plant flowers anymore because it's just useless. Officer Greer, we contacted him. He came out and we had it set up. One of the individuals backed out, which dropped us below the 2.4 level hunt there. He was doing his job. And I just want to stick up for him. We hear all these bad things. Let's hear some good things. So he did his job. They weren't allowed to. I talked to the hunter personally. He says, I can't come out there. We're under the 2.4 limit. Job well done by Officer Greer. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any further? The first row.
Tom Jarris, Crescent Ridge Drive, Seven Hills. I've had some conversations with Officer Greer. I heard him made an excellent presentation in caucus. He's talked to a lot of people. He's talked to other city officials. He seems to be trying to approach this professionally. 60% of Seven Hills said, let bow hunting happen. And anybody else is certainly entitled to their opinion. But 60% of the voters said, let it happen, and it needs to not be obstructed. I have one comment. The new council, I know you guys aren't up to speed on everything yet, and you can't expect it to be up to speed on everything. During the caucus meeting, there was whispering going on the dais. I think Councilman Biassiata even pointed out he had the floor. Whispering at open meetings, according to the governor's office, is a violation of sunshine law. I pointed this out to the previous council. I pointed this out to law. No whispering, no rustling of papers that keeps the audience from hearing. No briefcases, whatever. If it's an open meeting, which all our meetings are, the exception of executive session, you can't be whispering. People have a right to know what you're saying. And if you can't say it into the speaker, you shouldn't say it. Just that simple. The other thing, I emailed all of you an email. I forwarded to you an email from a person at the Army Corps of Engineers. We've heard it claimed wetland permit for the city's 2 parcels on Rockside Road. If there was that parcel, the person whose email I forwarded to you would have issued it. So there is no wetland permit. Does have an obligation. We adopted the Clean Water Act. You have an MS4 permit. That's for your sewer system. You have a responsibility behind that permit. And not only a responsibility to know what it is, but to enforce. This is all going back to the dedication plat and build a road here. That plat, that approval of that plat should have called out the necessity to address the waters of the United States that you know are on the property. Burden, you have a burden of enforcement. When you tell somebody, go ahead and put a road in, you need to tell them it has to be in compliance and in consideration of the waters of the United States. Playing a dangerous game here. We don't need to run afoul of the feds roadway. That's not your job. You're endangering the city to do so. So I wanted you to see you got it from the horse's mouth. The guy whose email I forwarded to you would have issued the permit for the city parcels. And he said there is no permit for the parcels. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Second row? Third row? Oh, second row.
My name is Russ Mazzola, 1032 Cherry Lane. It's kind of a general question. Maybe Stuart could help me out, right? The last couple articles about the Hemlock project doesn't mention Cherry Lane in here. And I know Cherry Lane because I have a septic tank. So, and the question is that I keep hearing it's 305 houses. You are counting the houses on Cherry Lane? Because we got to assess this, divide the assessment by 305 houses in there. We know that because that's the last three articles in the Sun paper has not mentioned Cherry Lane. They skip from Hillside to Nemeth to Twilight, whatever, and then the rest of them. But I never see Cherry Lane in the articles. So that they are being counted as part of the program as far as the houses go. I need a bigger number to divide that assessment up. That's why. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand your question.
Okay,
So hopefully someone will answer on a miscellaneous. If not, I will.
And the other thing, I know with the new council, we had talked about the old council, that we're going to supposedly, I don't know if this is a settled deal now about being assessed to repave the streets. Like $2.7 million repaving streets with part of our tax dollars from that Hemlock people that live in that area. Are we anywhere about the assessment for paving of the streets? Because I bet, but some of them other streets are terrible. They need to be repaving anyway. So keep that in the back of your mind that I think we need some help about the repaving of the streets. That we should not be assessed that. That's you don't have any answers at this point?
Well, I'm just enforcing the rules. This is a miscellaneous comment.
Oh, okay.
At the end of the meeting, the administration will have an opportunity to comment, and so will all of council.
Okay.
You're welcome. Anyone else in the second row? Third row? Fourth row?
Nancy Lowenthal. I live on Vincent Drive. My first thing is are we not supposed to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Yes, no? Okay. I have some concerns about what happened on Shelley Drive with the Airbnb. Where were the police? Can't answer that. Okay, I just want to let you know that dispatch hung up on me when I called. They were very rude to my daughter when she called. They said the police were down on Shelley and Daniel, so therefore me and a few other neighbors went down and walked, and they drove away from me. After they saw, obviously they saw us, and they just drove away. And I was in the street like, we need help. Wasn't taken care of when it first happened, before all those people came in. There's snow bans. They were double parked on the streets, and yes, the police can get through. They were blocking the driveways. What if there was a fire? What if somebody had a heart attack? How would they have gotten through? Why wasn't the street blocked up at Pleasant Valley and Edgewood when this was all happening? Down on Daniel and Shelley. I mean, this was a mess. I had to send my neighbors a text and tell them, get your children out of the front bedroom because there was talk about guns. And yet, still no police. 3 hours later, they came. And an email, I got an answer at 2:59. Saloon. Not an answer. Where were you? Where was my councilman, and where were you when all this was happening? In bed, snugly and warm, right? I mean, there was snowplows that use our turnaround from Independence. They couldn't get through. Our development as turnarounds, I don't know. I'd like to talk about that another time. Underage drinking, drugs, as you can see, it's all over the place in the news, cleveland.com. We've been on ABC, Fox, we've been on the Fox News Live. We've been on the Today Show. We were on Channel 3 again today and Channel 8 talking about this. Nobody's doing nothing. And do the police have body cams?
Ma'am, no, everybody will have an opportunity to comment later.
Okay.
This is miscellaneous comment. It's not a Q&A.
Left of the house, their house was a bit, the siding was destroyed. The person on the right, they were cutting through her backyard. I believe they were coming from Sprague, you know, because they couldn't get through. And I have a question. Mayor, are you not the CEO of the city? And it's your responsibility to direct the safety forces, right? This incident has proven that our police have no plan in place for an incident like this. I demand and suggest that you work with the police chief and the police department and that has much better response time than dispersing in potentially volatile and dangerous situations sooner than 3 hours after it began. I know, Mayor, you are the head safety officer of the city, so passing the buck to the police chief is entirely unacceptable to me when you sent me that email. And do we have any, are the chiefs and the directors, et cetera, do they need to write a report to let anybody know what they do and how they handle their duties? And concerned about what happened. We don't live in a bad neighborhood, but obviously Seven Hills is a joke now. It's called the party house. So I want something done about this. We had kids in the neighborhood, 50 people in that house. Something needs to be done. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your comment. Anyone further in the last row?
Good evening. I'm Bill Dutton. I'm actually a resident on Shelley Drive as well. Of 2 daughters and married. Going back to this, as it's been coined now, the banger house, the banger party house. You know, it's kind of a crazy event. You know, everybody's saying, oh, it was a party, just ran amok. That's not really what was going on. And the safety forces were advised earlier on that that was not what was going on. And just a little bit of background. I've seen a variety of different stories going around in the media as to what transpired, what didn't transpire. I can tell you firsthand that we saw traffic, and by the way, just for point of reference, the way. I don't know for sure. I believe the house number was 3190. Our house is 3038. Down from this. I would tell you around 9:30, we start seeing a lot of traffic. Now, similar to a lot of houses, our area of residence, primary residence, is the backside of the house. But we see a lot of traffic. We see cars parked up and down the street. Snow ban regulations. There's absolutely a snow issue. There's a safety issue. In fact, Chief, I would tell you that there was such a snow problem and traffic problem that around midnight when we went upstairs to go to bed, and we're seeing all these people walking up and down the street, and my wife and I both look and see 2 of your officers
walking down the middle of the street. Not walking because of the fact that it's a nice night to go for a stroll. The weather's horrible. Road conditions are terrible. 2 officers walking down the middle of the street because evidently they couldn't safely either park or drive to get to that house. So at this point, and as a little bit of background, suffered a traumatic brain injury a little over a year ago. Terrified of everything, terrified of loud noises. We thank God we live in a normal, quiet neighborhood, except for this night because, of course, we hear all the racket. We hear profanity as people in groups, in hordes, are walking down the street, screaming F-bombs, saying how drunk they are, how drunk they're going to be, what other things they want to do at this party. Window, we see the 2 officers walking down there. At this point, I tell my wife, I'm like, God, I mean, this is like an accident. And unfortunately, I'm going to rubberneck. It's in my neighborhood. I'm going out there. I want to see what's going on. So I walk down there. I see the officers walk to the house. By the time I get back, they're walking back. So I take an opportunity to go ahead and talk to the officers. I said, hey, what's going on here? Well, there's a party. Somebody threw a party. We're not sure exactly, but we know that it went viral. We know that there's way too many people in this house, and there are people coming and going. And I tell them, I'm like, hey, listen, we hear them swearing, we hear them screaming. Yeah, we hear them too. We're going to start towing cars. This is right around midnight. We're going to start towing cars, and we're going to bust this thing up. In fact, I've got pictures. They're great pictures. I'm sure you guys have seen them. They've been on the internet. I mean, this house is lit up. It's like a Disney castle or something like that. In every window. You can see them standing on the vestibule thing above the foyer. It's insane. I'm reading that reports started going into 911. So it's not like people didn't know about this early on. Okay? I talked to the officers. They're like, oh, roads are bad, but we're getting these guys out of here. We're shutting this thing down. Okay, this is around midnight. Okay? What inspires is the police officers go back to their car. I don't see them at that point. I go back inside. I grab a cup of coffee because I'm going back out. I go back outside. I talk to a couple of other neighbors that see it. Same thing. We're hearing people screaming and yelling, swearing. I personally heard people come out and scream that there's fighting going on and somebody has a gun. I mean, listen, this has happened in other communities. I've heard of stray bullets going off. So I make a point of stopping a Seven Hills SUV going down Shelley. I stop it in front of my neighbor's house, between the party house and my house. I come up to the passenger side of the SUV. It's one of the same officers that I talked to not more than 15, 20 minutes before. And he tells me, I go, hey, listen, by the way, I'm hearing now that there's fighting. I'm also hearing somebody scream that there's a gun, that somebody's got a gun. You guys got to do something here. Yes, sir, we're doing it. We're handling it. We're taking care of it. Now, just real quick, I'm not bashing the police, okay? I've got a lot of friends that are police officers, a couple that are firefighters, more that are police officers. Sheriff Pinkerton, or Pinkney, whatever, through Leadership Cleveland, very nice guy. So this is not about bashing law enforcement. This is questioning procedures, as Nancy was questioning, procedures, policies. What the heck was going wrong here? What did we do? Because nothing continued to happen. I saw that SUV on the end of the street. It sat there for at least another 15, 20 minutes. Okay? I walked down with Nancy. When Nancy approached that vehicle, she was literally no more than 5 to 10 feet away from that vehicle when the vehicle pulled off. She's waving her arms. She's hollering. There's no way that the officer misses this. Okay? Inexcusable to pull off like that. At 1:30, in between, in fairness, I also witnessed 15 to 20 people beating the living snot out of 2 other people in front of that same house. I mean, this is not a little recreational party, people having a few cocktails, gets a little loud. This is absolutely Animal House, insane and dangerous. So 1:30, we see all the police department cars. I've heard, what, 5 different communities. They start to bust it up. Everybody runs. Except that I'm hearing at around 2:30, when I come back out and I talk to a Parma cop who's sitting in the driveway of my next door neighbor, and I asked him about it. I go, man, what happened here? What went wrong? He goes, this thing got a life of its own, is what I think. Reality is, when we went in, by the time we got in that house, there were still 100 people in there. They didn't care. I also heard stories on the news that, well, you know, the 2 guys that went up there, they were scared for their lives when they went up there. They had stuff yelled at them, and et cetera, et cetera. Nobody's saying for those 2 guys to charge in on their own. To them, not expecting them to show fear visibly, but they weren't looking like they were upset. They weren't saying, hey, this is way out of control here. They just said, it's a party that's getting crazy. We got to tow these cars and shut this thing down. Okay? I talked to the Parma cop, and he tells me, I said, hey, how did you guys end up showing up here this late? I mean, this has been going on for a while now. And he says, here, look at the screen here, sir. 47 for other departments to show up for this. He goes, we came as soon as we could. The roads are bad. In fact, the roads are treacherous. And I'm still wondering, just like Nancy, what transpired that whole time here? How do we not more effectively stop people from going in and out of that party? Because you know what? I get it. Numbers were not on the safety force's side. But you know what? 50, 75, 100 people go into the party after they showed up. Visit around 12 o'clock. They kept going in and out. Nobody's stopping this thing. At what point, as a citizen, I'm questioning, at what point is it the responsibility of the officers to escalate this? It's a safety issue, and if there was such a safety issue that these guys were worried about their lives, what about the neighbors? What about that lives next door to me, that her house is between my house and the party house? How is she supposed to feel? If the police aren't comfortable being there because of the fact that they're concerned about safety, they're concerned about this thing getting out of hand, how's she supposed to feel? You know, we've got, again, we've mentioned young kids that live across the street. You know, how do we not have better procedures in place? How do we not have the standard operating procedures for somebody to say, hey, wait a second, this is out of control, we can't handle it, let's get something else going? It just blows me away. I've heard furthermore that there were really no arrests in this thing. This is what the Parma cop tells me. Okay? And I've read the news, and all I've heard is that this Isaiah guy that rented it or started the party, he was arrested subsequently. Okay, turned himself in, I believe as recent as today. He at night was detained. And I've heard, hey, listen, it was a decision to disperse the crowd. It was far better. Meanwhile, that guy's being charged for underage drinking, other issues with alcohol. I'm telling you, we saw people stumbling drunk. We're hearing reports in the news that people are standing in place throwing up because there's no room to move. So then help me understand, if they're that intoxicated, how is it safer for them to go ahead and drive home that night in these treacherous road conditions? God forbid, we're lucky that somebody didn't get killed on those highways or on the local roads, because we had a bunch of alcoholic drunks driving home. And if that's not the case, then why are we charging anybody with alcohol issues? Like I said, this is not a matter of bashing the police. This is not a matter of bashing anybody. But as a concerned citizen, as a father, as a husband, I tell you, I was worried about my kids. I was worried about my family. Because what was going on there and hearing multiple reports of guns, those are things that really, I didn't move to Seven Hills for this. We've been a resident for 15, 17 years. I mean, this is a joke. If I want to do this, I'd go live in Maple. I'd go live in Garfield Heights. The house is there. You know, East Cleveland. That's not this. This is Seven Hills. This is supposed to be a safe community. We're not supposed to worry about this type of thing. And we're also supposed to have confidence in our safety forces and our leadership here. And that if something is too large for this city to handle, it's okay. reach out to other communities and do it quicker. And we need to have procedures and policies to make sure that people know how to handle these kind of situations going forward. Because God forbid, we got lucky. No gunshots went off. Nobody got hurt. But I sure don't want to be around for another incident, especially in my neighborhood. Like I said, we want to know how things get better and what we're doing, not just sweep it under the rug. That's what we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else tonight?
I'm at 3199 Shelley Drive. I had a front view seat, or front view to the occurrences that night. It was one of the kids that was mentioned. We were watching. I think it was Christmas with the Cranks that night. It was a Christmas movie. It's snowing outside. We're getting through. And at about 11 o'clock, when the TV goes down and we start hearing all this thumping outside, my wife, and we were laughing at first, like, wow, this is crazy. How many people could possibly, every window had a different light. As the night progressed, it obviously became progressively worse. I'm not going to recap and recover all the ground that's been discussed by my neighbors. I know that from the officer's perspective, it's a confluence of incidents. You got a house, then the two of them can handle. But as things start degrading and breaking down in that middle of that story, as Bill and Nancy were pointing out, when I get that call that says, hey, you know what, and my son, it was the first time he's going to hear about the fact that there were guns in the area. You're going to be thrown through the windows possibly. So I got to move you to your sister's room. 18-year resident in Seven Hills. I'm an engineer. I work in the area. We're a nice quiet area here. To have move my son into another back bedroom is out of a movie that none of us really should be there. And it's not any particular person's fault or any of the again, the officers had to do what they had to do. But there really has to be some amount of, whether it be soul searching, whether it be some procedural review that says, when you have something like this, we are not a city that has a SWAT team. But what are the steps to take to immediately escalate it? I would like to see, and no offense to all the council members, but all the bickering that goes on during election time when the mayor's talking about this guy and the council, sit down, write an ordinance that says, if you have an Airbnb rental, you issue, you have to, as a citizen, you have to let the police department know that I'm having an Airbnb that night. I'm not going to be home. So if the police come knock on the door and there's loud music and all, they'll know that the homeowner is not home. They start clearing the place. There's none of this escalation of, well, who's here and who's not there. It's they're a fantastic organization. They're going to cover my neighbor's damages of $7,000. There's so many conflicting reports of him being locked up in his bedroom with being threatened by guns, by being somebody brandished a weapon, to basically him not knowing that this was supposed to be a party, basically be escalating like this. At the end of the day, he's the homeowner. If the homeowner wasn't at home in the future, if this happens in the future, I'm sorry, I'm rolling on here, but my neighbors gave me some courage basically to get up here to recant. But I wanted to just basically show that the fact that I have a 9-year-old boy and a 9-year-old twin girl, and for the first time ever, I'm afraid of my neighborhood basically. And that's just unacceptable to me. And I'm really hoping the council, when they do responses basically, we get some clarity at the end of the day. We're not looking to place blame. How does this not happen again in the future? And what steps are we put in place to prevent something like this happening? And more importantly, Airbnbs, again, fine organization and all, but how do we protect ourselves in the future? So, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Moving on to reports and communication from the mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just very briefly, Lucy, that was an awful lot to unpack. If you want, I don't know whether you have as yet made a written formal complaint. Are you kidding me? I don't know. But I don't know, but if you have not, I would suggest that you put it in writing so that we can take a look at it.
And who do I give that to, and who's going to take it from me without a big fight, without refusing it?
Give it to me. Whatever it is your complaint is, give it to me in writing, and we'll follow up. All right, with regard to the, I think it's called a rage. Took a look at some of the records. There were 2 dispatch calls, one that came in at 11:22 that evening, the second came in at 11:34. couple of our officers on scene at 11:50. Minutes of that first call coming in, we had a couple of officers there. They attempted, I'm told, to try to gain entry to the home, but were refused entry. There were a number of people in front of the property who went into the house and refused to allow anybody in. Where the owner was, but I just heard a gentleman allude to the owner of the property may have been barricaded in his room. Don't know whether that's the case or not. In these sorts of situations is to not permit the already dangerous situation to escalate any further. Obviously, officer safety is a consideration, safety of the residents is a consideration, protection of property, enforcement of laws, all of those things have to be taken under advisement. We made a decision, and I believe this happened roughly about 12:30, that they did not have enough manpower on scene. The city has what are called mutual aid agreements with surrounding communities. At that point in time, and Chief, please correct me if I'm missing anybody here, Broadview Heights, Independence, Parma, and I'm not sure whether we contacted
Brooklyn Heights.
Brooklyn Heights, thank you. So we had roughly a dozen officers on scene at that point. The officers observed that there were approximately 250 people in this home. Far exceeds the load-bearing capacity of the floors by permit, perhaps by 2.5 times. So it not only presented a significant danger to the residents, as well as the people inside the party, but certainly the officers who would be called upon to enter that building at a time when the load-bearing capacity had been exceeded so dramatically. With regard to whether they cordoned off the neighborhood, they immediately did that. I'm told that they shut off incoming traffic at Daniel and Shelley, except for residents, and they shut off, help me with this one, Chief, but they shut off traffic at the other end of Daniel as well, but I'm not exactly sure where that was.
It was Edgewood and Vincent.
Edgewood and Vincent, thank you. At that point in time, the officers reported seeing 40 to 50 vehicles leaving the area with up to 4 people in each of those vehicles. An additional 50 to 80 vehicles were turned away at the 2 roadblocks who were attempting to gain access to the neighborhood. Yes, there were cars parked everywhere, double parked, parking in people's driveways. The people at the party were very rowdy, and be very proud of the way our officers responded. They prevented an admittedly very volatile situation from becoming any worse. I'm told that there were a number of people who actually pushed their way out of the windows when the officers finally gained entry to the residence. Some of those people were left without a ride. They didn't have proper attire for this kind of weather, and our officers actually assisted them to prevent any injury to them. Going forward, and I just expressed to the media, my concern is, and I think somebody did question, well, why don't we have a procedure for rentals to be registered? We certainly and absolutely do. I don't believe anyway that this property was registered for a rental. So the police, the building department would have no idea that this party was going on until the calls started coming in. And obviously, we needed to bring in assistance from other communities. Going forward, I'd like to open a discussion about whether these can be prohibited entirely within 7 Hills. I think it's just an invitation to another incident like this happening in the future. I don't believe we're obligated to allow these sorts of activities, and I would defer to the law director on that one, but if there's a way to entirely prohibit them, that would be my first instinct here. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director of Finance.
No report.
Director of Law.
No report.
Director of Service.
No report this evening.
Building Commissioner.
No report.
Miscellaneous. Chief Saloom.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make a brief statement. After reviewing the incident, our officers responded to a noise disturbance and utilized proper tactics in shutting down the flow of traffic coming to the party and organizing, planning, and executing an appropriate response in terminating the party enforcement partners from 4 different communities. Officers responded appropriately and professionally. I'm very proud of their response. I thank our law enforcement partners for assisting our department with handling a difficult, evolving situation where a large crowd was moved out of our neighborhood without incidents. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Councilman Roble.
Nothing.
Councilman Snitsky.
Nothing at this time, sir.
Councilman Greenwald.
Yes. I'd like to extend my sympathies to all the people who were affected by this incident that happened. I've lived in Seven Hills for a very long time, and I know we've had parties. I know we had parties that have gotten out of hand. I think this is unprecedented. I don't think that we've ever had an incident like this before in Seven Hills. You know, I can understand why people are upset with police response. This is a small community. It's a safe community. It's a community where people feel safe. And we have the police department of a small community. And it was overwhelmed by the amount of people who came to this event. And, you know, I appreciate that you guys, you know, had to deal with this for longer than you probably should have. Take a close look at what the police department did. And I think that I have faith in Chief Saloom and the mayor that they're going to put measures in place to ensure that in the extremely unlikely event that something like this happens again, that we have an even better response than we had this time. I'm very happy that the police department managed to sort this situation out without any serious injuries. There was some damaged property. I'm sure that all of you were scared, but there wasn't any permanent damage to anyone or any property as a result of this. Proud of the police for the job that they did. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Stager.
Nothing at this time.
Councilman Elliott.
I'm just going to echo what Randy said. This is not going to get slid under the rug like sometimes it does. I want to see some stuff. I'm a police officer. I can assure you I've been in some of those situations. I used to be on a horse, and they sent us into those situations, and they're extremely dangerous. I think they call them rages now. They used to be called flash mobs. It's the same thing. Thousands of people, guns. Unfortunately, it happened on your street. They're very hard to stop. They actually pop up in a matter of half hour, an hour. You'll have hundreds of people. Getting them out can be a problem. So I want to look into a few things too. A couple questions real quick.
Sure.
I'll allow it.
I think your officers did a great job. That's what we're taught. Properly armed. I mean, do we have rifles in this city? Do we have tasers in this city? Flex cuffs to take on hundreds of people? Are they issued one set of handcuffs or flex cuffs where you can put flex cuffs on a chain and show them that, hey, this is how we're going to take care of business? You're going to have 10 people in cuffs walking them down the street.
Currently, we don't have all the equipment we need. We don't have rifles. We don't have tasers. We have some flex cuffs, but not enough.
Okay.
There are some issues that we need to address as far as equipment and also manpower.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Councilman Elliott. Councilman Kelly.
No comments at this time.
Well, I'll wrap things up tonight. For the residents from Shelley, thank you for coming tonight and circumstance and sharing your thoughts and experience. The matter will be taken with all the courtesy and respect it should. Legislatively, we have a rules committee that would talk about stuff like this, and I'll wait for the investigation still pending, but when it's finished, I'll bring in legislation patterned after the state of New York, which has the toughest and short-term rentals, which is what Airbnb falls under. So, we're not, the city isn't benefiting from that at all. We're not making any money. Why should we allow it? Let's restrict it to the extent we can. The things we can do, that's what council's job is, introduce legislation to address needs. So this unfortunate incident exposed the laws of an older city, and we're going to update that law to match the modern way some people do commerce. So we're going to do it in a methodical, pragmatic way. The investigation will complete. We'll review what laws we didn't have, and we'll find out, like I said, I've already looked up. State of New York is the toughest in the nation, and we'll start from there. All right. Russ, did you get a letter? Okay. Your part, Cherry is part. Okay. And this, that's what I was going to announce, but I'm kind of tired out. Mayor or Service Director, what are the dates on Thursday at the town hall?
I know I'm out of turn here. We're scheduling 2 town hall meetings on January the 11th, one at 1 in the afternoon and one at 6 o'clock, so that if people have other commitments, they can attend one or the other, or perhaps even both. The plan is to have, excuse me, the appropriate city officials there to go through whatever questions may arise. We're going to present an FAQ. We'll have an additional copy of the assessment letter available. But the idea is to hopefully bring everybody as up to speed as possible with whatever information we have at that point. We posted it on the city website. I believe you may have gotten a letter from me maybe a couple weeks ago announcing that. So anybody that you know who's interested in the project, please let them know to attend. There with as much information as we can possibly provide at this point. Our urgency is that we must be in the ground relatively quickly to preserve the grant money that's available. And we can answer questions like how much the city is contributing toward the expenses that you alluded to as well at that time.
Hope to see you Thursday. I think I covered everyone's questions for the most part. So everyone be careful on the roads and for showing an interest in Seven Hills and giving your feedback. I motion to adjourn. A roll call?
Biassiata.
Yes.
Elliott. Greenwald.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Snitsky.
Yes.
Stager.
Yes.
Robo.
Yes.
Council is adjourned.
That would be better.